And welcome everybody to this special event. We have a really amazing guest today, Dayna Kleve with Walser Automotive Group. Is going to be reprising her NADA talk for us on ERGs. So if you miss it, you get to have it today. So first though, I can move things around. I want to run through our agenda real quick. Of course, opening, I'm going to go through the antitrust guidelines very quickly and just tell you a little bit about the council, and then we'll jump right into Dayna's session because there's so much great information there. I don't want anybody to miss anything. So the Allied Industry Inclusion Council, we have this is the wrong slide. We're now called the Automotive Inclusion Council. We have had since the beginning, since April of last year, so we're just a little over a year old. Put on my birthday hat. We've evolved, right, and continue to evolve. So we've changed the name, we've changed the format a little bit, but we still are cognizant that because we are groups and organizations across all sectors of the industry, we may have competitors in the room. So, we're here to talk about DEI. We're here to talk about best practices. We're going to listen to outside speakers. We have and panels. We did, in March, we had a panel of members for women's history. So things that we're not doing is sharing company secrets. We're not selling anything to anybody. So that is very important. And I always, Katia, and Lisa's here with Katia. Katia is near and dear to my heart. And they have, if anybody's interested in getting some education for someone on staff, because you know that you want to do something, but you're just not sure where to start. What I can share with my own experience is, one, as a 20-year plus HR professional, what I knew is that I was unprepared to step into this work. I had a heart for it, but I needed to do a lot of learning. And one place that you can go is to Cadia, right? They have an accelerator program. At least it's 13 weeks, right? It's a 13-week program.
12 sessions, 13 weeks, starts in September this year.
Yep. So, just in time. This is a great time to get people geared up.
Come
So
on. Thanks,
I
Sandy.
highly recommend it. So that's just a plug, because Cadia is one of the great resources for our industry. They're automotive specific. Our council is growing, right? Our newest member is Jessica Jorlaman Siren from OneView. Jessica's helping me run this. She's co-host today. She's let you all in from the waiting room. And Jessica, welcome. So happy to have you and all of our members. Like, we're just growing little by slowly. And welcome to everyone who's new to the council. So what the council is, right, is we are a group of people who are a group of organizations who, one, we recognize that these three things that we seem to talk about and have talked about since I've been in the industry, particularly in retail, attracting talent, high turnover, and the gender gap. And I couple that with the minority ownership gap. There is only 7, I learned yesterday, it's actually gone down. There's 19,000 dealerships and only 1,400 minority owned dealerships, right? So it's gone down a little bit. It's 7%. So we talk about these things, but the needle never moves. And I think what I came to realize is that the reason is because we treat them as individual problems when what they are symptoms. And I believe that they're symptoms of a collective culture that has yet to embrace inclusion. So part of what this council is developing into is taking that message out to the industry at large. And we've started doing some research. There's quite a few things that we're doing. Things are changing. There's roundtables, there's events like this, there's best practices. We did a webinar yesterday in collaboration with Reuters. I'll talk about that a little bit. We do panels. And then the council itself, members meet quarterly. So the monthly, anything we do monthly is open to everybody. But the planning sessions for what we're going to do is quarterly. So, and that's where members have a voice and can help guide this council. I said from the beginning, I founded the council, but I don't want to be queen of the council, right? It's collective voices that are so super important. So, there is opportunity. I was really hoping to do this talent acquisition study. And then quite recently, I'm reaching out to there was a professors, it's a amazing study over 3 years. They did 80,000, they did a talent acquisition, they did a resume study, and they got some pretty interesting information from retail automotive. So I'm reaching out to them to see if they can come and present, if they can carve that out and come and present to us. I don't know if you caught, there's an article on New York Times. I'm not calling anybody out at this moment or ever. So the council, the membership for the council is it's an annual investment, $1,500, and that gives you 2 seats for anybody in your organization to join us at the quarterly meetings, have a voice, and help guide our industry. This year, really, really, really want to put recommendations, put something out to the industry at large about what we've learned and what we need to do. So I don't know if you caught it yesterday. I'm going to send the link out. They already sent the recording link out. That we had an amazing panel with Sherry Schultz, who's the CHRO at Walser, Mark Bland, the Chief Diversity Officer at S&P Global Mobility, and of course, Damon Lester. Damon is just amazing. What an amazing voice for diversity, equity, and inclusion in our industry at large. So I'll send the link out so that if you missed it, you can see it. So next month is Pride Month. So I'm getting ready for Pride Month. I think my first Pride parade was in like 1985, right? And I've been going ever since. And back in 2020, I came across this book, Be an Inclusion Ally, the ABCs of LGBTQ. And Lisa is going to present to us. So she's going to come. I'm talking with her on tomorrow. No, what's today? Thursday? I'm talking with her tomorrow. And so I'm excited for that. She's got a really great presentation. And without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and introduce to you Dayna Kleve. Dayna's been a friend for a while. I'll let Dayna introduce herself. And I got to see the presentation that you're going to see, and I can guarantee that you're going to get a lot out of it. And so Dayna, I'm going to.
Thank you. Yeah, this is, I always am continually amazed at like how many connections are, just by friend to friend, and this industry is so connected. And so that is truly how Sandy and I met. We attended the same, I think it was Digital Dealer. You were moderating a panel, as you are so skilled at, and that's how we met. So this is really cool to be here. So I'm gonna try not to screw this up while I share my screen again. And then I'm gonna do that. There, look okay? Cool. Okay, so if you have any questions throughout this is pretty informal. Feel free to use the chat. I will do my best to monitor it, but Sandy, I might lean on you to interject if you see anything come up. because I might miss it. So yeah, so I had the privilege of getting to share this message at NADA just a few months ago, and it was a pretty cool experience to be able to have that platform to talk about a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. And if you know me, you know that I didn't really like grow up in automotive. I don't know who does exactly, but I did not come from an automotive background. I come from a news media background. And so I really kind of fell into this work. And so I'm pretty transparent about the fact that I'm not the end all be all knowledge of this information, but I think the way that we've gotten really good at it in my organization is by connecting with people such as yourself, other groups, other industries on how to do this really well. And so I like to just kind of use that as a backdrop that this is something that anybody can do with the right energy and resources. So I support Walser Automotive Group. I'm their Director of Diversity, Engagement, and Foundation. And again, pretty transparent, when I started at Walser in 2017, this title was not a thing. This work that we're doing was not a thing. This department really did not exist. And I tell you that because this is kind of a good case study on what can be possible in just a really short amount of time when you have a committed focus and effort on this topic. So a little bit of background on Walser. We're a 27 rooftop dealer out of Minneapolis, about 2,000 employees. So that's a little bit about kind of how we came to be here. Anytime I do a presentation, I like to give you kind of what you can expect from me, keeps me honest, and what you can walk away from. And I've been to a lot of really good workshops and presentations and things where I'm really inspired, and then I leave and I'm like, but like, how do I do it? Like, I always I need a playbook. I like a playbook. And so when I was building this, I really wanted to make sure that I empowered the people who attended to have some concrete steps that they could take and implement in their own workplace, whether you are a dealer, an OEM, a vendor, no matter what your vertical is or what your employee size is, anything that you could take and maybe grow from. And just before I jump into any more, I'm just curious, does anyone have employee resource groups? Feel free to unmute yourself currently, or I'm assuming most people here at least have a sense of what they are, but does anyone actively have employee resource groups?
Leslie does.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so like, and I always like going to things where I'm like, great, I'm on the road to it because I can always pick things up from it. So hopefully, whether you're familiar with this topic or you're just kind of jumping in, this is of use to you. So kind of jumping into the the ABCs of ERGs. ERGs, they are employee resource groups. I'm going to use that acronym a lot. And they also have a couple other naming structures out there. Sometimes they're called BRGs, or business resource groups, or affinity groups. There's a slight nuance between kind of the different namings, but whatever you're choosing, there's kind of a connection there. We went with employee resource group. Another defining factor of ERGs is that they're employee-led and they're employee-driven. So these are employees who have full-time day jobs on top of their involvement with the employee resource groups. They're salespeople, they're accountants, they're recruiting, folks, they're, service advisors. They have, full-time work in addition to this sort of elevated extracurricular that they're taking on for the organization. ERGs are typically formed around some kind of social identity or demographic. That could be gender, race, sexual orientation, religion, veteran status, parenthood could even be a source for an ERG. But typically it's some sort of identifier that's bringing that group together. And ERGs really primarily are meant to foster professional development, be a place where people can come together, they can network, they can work on their personal development skills, which typically leads into professional development, and really are a hub for diverse employees to come together and just kind of create some community and some connection. This one I feel really strongly about, which is why I gave it its own slide. Perhaps one of the biggest defining factors among all those other really important things is that ERGs have to align to your business. So whatever they're focused on, I've even seen some organizations that have ERGs focused on environmentalism or pets. Like, if you're Petco, that might make a lot of sense, but whatever it is, your ERG has to align to the backbone of your business, because it's a really tough ask to go to your executive leadership and say like, hey, can you fund this group? I have this great idea, without it driving the business forward or propelling the business forward. There has to be a really good cause and reason for the way that it's going to create an impact. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we did that at Walser and made our case for that. So I want to give you just a little bit of backdrop on what ERGs are in effect at Walser today. So we started our DE&I journey in earnest in 2018 with our first employee resource group. And it really came with the coming into our organization of Sherry Schultz, who was on the slide just a little bit ago. She's my boss, and I feel really lucky that I get to work under someone such as her. She really had a vision for it. And that's really kind of how we got started. And Women of Walser is really focused on the recruitment, retention, and ascension of women into management roles in the automotive industry. It's kind of a to play there, that we're really focused on our employees, but we're also focused on a better buying experience for our customers. And I will share more on that too. Things went really great in 2018, and we went back to our employees and we said, hey, if we could start another group in soon, what would you like to see? And employees said, like, well, okay, we'd love to see something for women. We're like, yep, got it. We'd love to see something for our LGBTQ plus employees, and we'd really like to see something on parents. It's like, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting. We have a really good culture of asking our employees through surveys and engagement, kind of pulse points, that is a really good tool for us. And so we said, great, like we asked, you answered, here we go. And so we kicked off Drive with Pride, which focuses on LGBTQIA plus employees through allyship, education, advocacy. Community involvement is a huge component of this group. We're also gearing up for all of our Pride events. We have a picnic. It's our 4th annual Pride Family Picnic on Sunday. We usually get about 80 people who come. So this group is very active, and it's a really great group to be involved with. That was at the end of 2019. And then this little thing came around in 2020 that kind of derailed everything. But we managed to keep our groups intact virtually, just like everyone else did. We pivoted and did a really good job of getting creative on how to keep our supporter network growing and engaging with people virtually. And especially at a time when people really needed some, like a little virtual hug, these groups were really helpful at keeping us going. 2022, we kind of came out of that wake of COVID, and an employee came to me and said, hey, Dayna, I see what you're doing with WOW. I see what you're doing with Drive with Pride. I love that. I'm Hmong, would you consider sponsoring this community event? It's this big thing coming up in July. And me and his GM said, yes, 100% we're in. And we sponsored that event. And we kind of took a crawl, walk, run approach. We formed an advisory council. We pulled together some employees who had expressed interest in this event. And we really just we did that event because it was mid-year. We couldn't dedicate a ton of money to it, but we started to have a real conversation about, if we formed another ERG, what would it look like? How would it work? What would we do? And really kind of the same process. And then in 2023, the Asian Hmong Alliance kicked off and took off. And that group has been also extremely active throughout May, which is AAPI month. And then in 2024, just a few months ago, this group has been in the works for such a long time, despite all these kind of other, groups coming up. We knew that there was a real need to connect with our veteran and military connected employees, or those who are perhaps even still serving, and wanted to make sure that we really were positioned right to launch this group the way we needed to. And so VAW got off and running in March. We just did some flag placement at the National Cemetery for Memorial Day. And so this group is really committed, and it's been really amazing to see it going. So that's kind of what we're working with right now in our current organization. I mentioned that we have a good culture of talking to our employees, and I wanted to kind of give you some feedback on, it's all well and good to have these groups, but I want to tell you a little bit about the impact we're already seeing from them. So we do a big employee engagement survey in my organization every other year, and we did it in 2020, again came back a little bit later in 2023, and we had about 79% of our population participate. About 1,500 people participated, and really encouragingly, we saw a 10-point increase in engagement. People said they're happier, they like the improvements that have been made. So that was a really great, improvement off the bat. But this year we said, hey, let's get a little more tactical about our ERGs. We have some data to go off of, or some time under our belts. And so we just asked, and 9 out of 10 of the people who participated said, yeah, I know what your ERGs are. I got them. I understand that they're happening and they're around. But we went even further and we said, okay, so for the people who are involved in those ERGs, what do you think? And we found that the people who actively participate, they're more engaged, they're more committed, more inspired, they're willing to work harder just because they're connected to these employer resource groups, which to me is pretty pretty impactful. You know, there's a lot of different KPIs you can look at for the success of these groups, like retention, you know, promotion rates, all sorts of different things. But feedback like this is really crucial for me when I think about, you know, what we're doing, because it's a little bit of art, it's a little bit of science. You kind of have to have your ear to the ground to understand how people are feeling, but this is also a really concrete, great way to understand what people are thinking. A couple more stats to throw at you. On that same survey, 77% of our employees said that they agree they belong at Walser. 76% said they feel like they can bring their whole selves to work and express their opinions, which I interpret as psychological safety, which is really critical in a workplace where you can grow and feel free to grow. And 79% agree that Walser lives out its EVP, its employee value proposition of career, family, and diversity. And I'm going to talk to you about a little bit more about how that has shaped itself in our company. Another cool element of this survey is that we also asked for some writing comments. And so I'm going to move my little bar here. There we go. So we asked employees kind of directly what they thought, and people said that, you know, Walser promotes inclusivity, diversity, and creative viewpoints. The ERGs are non-conventional, and the benefits are, or the non-conventional benefits are astounding. And what they're referring to there, we have paid maternity, paternity, and adoption leave. We have fertility and adoption assistance, open PTO, lots of things that really speak to what our employees are asking to see in their workplace. Offering the ERGs is fantastic, especially Drive with Pride. Being gay is normally frowned upon in the car world, so it's nice that the company has made LGBTQ plus employees feel safe to be who they are. Love that. And this last one, you know, you might take it as like, oh, a miss, but I actually love this last comment. There are some great ERGs that really make people feel good about working at Walser. Though not actively involved, I do recognize the importance and making the company better overall. Keep it up. So for me, that says, great, this person recognizes what we're doing. And that's where I'm pointing my compass next, because there is a person who's primed and ready that might be able to come join the fold pretty soon. So, you know, thinking about this data, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that talks about how data can drive your DE&I strategy and how it can push your mission forward. And we really use this to think about how we, you know, make future moves when it comes to our DE&I strategy. And I want to talk a little bit more about that why, which is really kind of getting into the meat and potatoes of how we got started. So I mentioned, you know, Sherry, my boss, and when she came to Walser in 2017, she was ready to dig in a little bit, and she and some senior leaders at the time participated in some blind focus groups, and because she wanted to get a sense of, and I think they all did, of what you know, what customers were thinking of us. And so they went to customers and they said, what do you think? And they said, hey, well, you know, we actually really love shopping with you. We like, you know, we like the environments. We like the clean dealerships. We like the way you do business, one person, one price, that all, that fits great, you know, no negotiations. But, you know, I got to tell you, it feels kind of homogenous. I feel like we don't really see ourselves when we come in and shop with you. And that was real focus groups data. And kind of concurrently, this stat has been out there for a while. And if you run in these DE&I circles, you might have heard this, but we also knew that 62% of all cars in the US are purchased by women. Likewise, 85% of the time, women are influencing the purchase of a household good. So they might not actually be buying the vehicle or signing the title, but they're right there, maybe arm in arm with someone else saying like, I want it red, I want it mid-size. They were there, they're present on your show floors in pretty big numbers. But what they're often being met with is the stat that's, you know, 22% of dealership staff nationwide are women. And so that we found there was this kind of major disparity between the customers coming in our door and the staff that was meeting them. And we know that women communicate differently, they think differently, they emote differently, they shop differently. And so why wouldn't we take advantage of this, you know, kind of bridging this gap to meet women where they are and help making their shopping experience better? And as we thought about this, coupled with that blind focus group data, you know, Sherry went to our CEO and just said, hey, listen, we have a real opportunity. Are you in to do something different? And he's a pretty progressive guy. And like any good CEO likes data to back it up. And he said, yeah, I'm in. I see what you're asking, and I think we should do it. So this was what really formed the basis of our ERG why. And yes, it started with women, but as as we got deeper and deeper into this process, we realized this can apply to all, because what's good for women is good for men, is good for just general retention and engagement, where you can be yourself in the workplace. And so on a cold kind of December night in 2018, we pulled together all women and people who support women and just said, hey, all call, come join us. We rented out a cool brewery. We got together, we put our case for change out there, and we laid it out there with this mission statement, which is to drive the growth, development, and engagement of female employees while positively impacting our business results and the communities we operate in. And we never shied away from the fact that this is meant to grow our business and grow our employees. And again, what's good for the business is often good for the employees and vice versa. And so, there was like, people were excited, but there was definitely some cautious kind of optimism. People were like, well, we like tried this before and it kind of like fizzled out. What's to say it's not going to happen again? And someone else, I will never forget this. She was like, I've been in this business for 20 years and I made it by myself. But where were you 20 years ago? And like, this has been so tough. And like, there was definitely like a grieving period that we had to move through for people to really get on board and say, okay, I believe you. I don't think this is going to fizzle out. Like, I see what you're doing, because kind of making the pitch had never been on this level, asking for their support. And so again, we kind of turned to them and said, like, here's our case for change. Are you in? And they said, yeah, okay, we're in. And so we kind of got off and running, and that's where we went with it. And you can see kind of the development of our ERGs from there. And I mentioned that word EVP, our employee value proposition. And this night and this momentum with Women of Walser and all these other groups is really what began to develop our employee value proposition, which is career family diversity. And when I talk about an EVP, it's what employees can expect to get, kind of in return, sort of a non-monetary kind of benefit wise, in terms of like what they're getting from you as an organization. Obviously, we have this contract, this mutual contract of work and pay, and that's all well and good. But we know that people are looking for something more where in the places where they work. Our EVP through that pulse surveying and through asking and through certain exercises, we've learned that career is incredibly important to our employees. They want to know where they're growing. They want to have a growth plan. They want to see what's possible for them in this industry. People always talk about, well, there's so much opportunity in automotive, but that, show me, tell me how I can grow. Is it a lateral move? Is it a lattice move? Am I up? Give me a plan. Family. People also told us family was incredibly important. Our number one core value in our company from employees, from employees stated, is family. And diversity really started to crop up a lot more and more. Acceptance, tolerance for core values people were talking about, thanks in part to these employee resource groups. This, by the way, is an actual screenshot from our careers website, or a previous iteration of it. We're very open about how we connect with new people who want to join our company. Our EVP has completely influenced how we recruit, how we reach out to candidates in new talent pools that are deeper and more non-traditional than we had in previous experiences. The quality of candidates has changed, and people who apply who are really interested, especially people like Gen Z who want to feel an impact where they work. It's influenced our benefits that we offer. As I mentioned, the vendors we work with, our street cred, our OEM connections and open points that are influenced perhaps by our ability to be an employer, a great employer of people, and also be really effective at business. And of course, that community influence and impact. So I talked a little bit about the what, I talked about the why, and now I'm going to jump into the how on how to actually do this, because I did tell you we would walk away with some concrete steps. This is just really kind of things that we have done there. I don't think there's any one right way to do this. And for people who do have their own employee resource groups or have seen it done differently other places, there's no right or wrong way to do it, but this is just some of the things that have worked for us in our own experience. So first step, obviously going back to that ERG why, you need to identify your group's purpose and focus. Like, what is the reason you want to see this group come to be, and really start to think about that mission, that vision, focus areas for yourself. And again, this is going to vary from group to group. All of our employee resource groups have different missions, but a lot of times their focuses are somewhat similar in that they're focused on professional development, they're focused on personal development, community involvement, and more of our groups have mental health as a focus for them as well, which is kind of cool. So really start to think about those pieces. Step 2 then is to kind of gauge the interest, and there's a number of ways to do this. I talked about the pulse survey method. That's a great way to do it. You can organize an informal advisory committee just to get a sense from people who might have an interest, to kind of put some pen to paper on it. Gathering sentiment from one-on-one conversations, review your EEO data, see what your makeup looks like right now, and if there are any obvious gaps. And some of the language you can use when you're putting it out there. If we created a company-focused group, a company-sponsored group focused on blank, how likely are you to participate? And using all of these different tools at your disposal, all free, by the way, to connect with your employees and kind of put some oomph in your arsenal when you're going to go make the ask. The next step is you have to have leadership buy-in, and you need to start connecting and kind of securing some commitments from people, key supporters who are going to help you potentially make this happen. So people like that could be your HR team. They're going to be an obvious player here. The more and more I learn about ERGs, they are often kind of HR sponsored groups or company sponsored groups, because HR is your people force, and so that's a natural place for them to live. That's where all of our employee resource groups are housed, is under our HR department. Look for any known hand raisers, people who have already suggested they have interest, they would be willing to help you elevate this message. And then, of course, your executive team is probably going to be the most important group that you're going to need to connect with. That could be your dealer principal, could be to your owner, could be just a group of execs. And I guess if it were me, I wouldn't ever go into an executive team meeting without having my game plan ready at this point, because I know their time is valuable, and I need to be ready. If they're ready to talk about it, I need to be ready. So I would suggest maybe thinking about some of those charter pieces or the game plan on how to get going. I just want to interject this here. Like, what if leadership doesn't understand? Because this is a question I've gotten a lot, and it's a real hurdle. If the sentiment isn't understood, or maybe the timing isn't right. But a couple of tips. And I feel really, again, super lucky that I have a CHRO who is really super passionate about this work, has lots of industry experience. And it's not just like, oh, because it feels good. She's seen real impacts to the business because of it. So that was a huge help, and I will acknowledge that. But again, find that ally in your upper management who can champion this on your behalf. Someone who maybe is your boss, maybe is adjacent to your leader, but can help bring it up, especially if you don't have access to some of those meetings, you're not in those executive meetings, someone who can bring it up on your behalf in moments where it makes sense. I encourage you to start small and really think about how those steps can connect to the business goals. Like, making a huge ask without having a lot of data to back it up sometimes can be a hard pill to swallow for a leader, especially if you're asking for a lot of financials. So think about what is realistic and how to in your growth plan from there. And then consider the timing. I can't emphasize this enough. If you're going through a big, tech implementation, or you're about to open a new point, or you're moving offices, or whatever's happening, anything that's a disruption to your daily business, maybe it's not the right time to launch this new thing if you're really looking for that support. So think about the things are going to happen throughout the year, and or maybe a good point in timing. For example, our veterans group is thinking about what a discount looks like for our military connected folks. Minnesota is about to go through a change with I believe it's a tax benefit in July for people who are in the military. And so we're kind of thinking about, is that the right time to pair this big kind of adjustment to this discount program? So think about the timing, whether it's connected to the particular group or just inside your organization, and what makes sense. And then last but not least, make it personal, connect it. I think we all have elements of diversity in our life, seen or unseen, and finding a way to connect that with the people you're making this request to is really critical. Whatever that looks like, but just find a way to connect and get real about it, because oftentimes the head won't change until the heart changes. And so taking some time to think about that is going to be helpful. From here, if you haven't done this yet, now is the time to get serious about kind of developing your charter and thinking about what the group actually is going to do, just kind of good housekeeping on how to keep yourself organized. This is something that we've kind of learned trial by fire about, keeping really good cadence on our documentation and how we can transfer that from group to group. So your charter is going to be a place where you can define your ERG structure. Maybe you have a president, a vice president, or co-presidents. Maybe you have a set number of committee chairs kind of for your focus areas, like whatever that looks like and whatever makes sense to you. Maybe you need a treasurer, things that kind of help you stay organized. This is where you're going to detail that out and what those people are going to do. Those leadership roles and criteria, any kind of operational guidelines, attendance requirements and expectations, responsibilities, sort of the viewpoint that, at least in our company, we view ERG leadership as a really elevated extracurricular. It goes on, it happens in succession planning conversations where it's mentioned and acknowledged. So like thinking about the responsibility that your leadership has, this is all that place where you can detail those roles and responsibilities. This is a great place to detail your KPIs that you're aiming for, those key performance indicators. And if, board chair stipends are something that, you're able to implement, then this would be a place where you would lay that out. We always do a sign off, a board chair sign off, when we implement new folks to our boards, so they are aware of the requirements and the expectations. And stipends were not something that we did up until a couple of years ago. We, had plenty of people who were willing to do this work and still would be without any kind of extra financial incentive. But we do this as a recognition that this is hard work, this is head work, takes time, it takes effort on top of a regular job. And we're fortunate to have a budget that allows for that a little bit of incentive. This is the fun part. You get to name your ERG if you haven't thought about this yet. Sometimes naming schemes, they can be uniform. You can have like, I think LinkedIn has like LinkedIn parents, LinkedIn veterans, everything's kind of similar, or, maybe it's an acronym or just whatever it makes sense. This is a little screenshot from Toyota's website. They have a lot of different, I think they call them business partnering groups. They have a lot of different ones on there. And I sometimes when I need some inspiration, I'm like, what are they working on? But it's just kind of cool to see that. So all of our groups have sort of been named either through, collaboration or just someone had a great idea, but whatever it is, bottom line, it needs to be short. It needs to be simple, easy to understand, and memorable. Designing that logo for your group, maybe it's made by your in-house creative team or even on Canva if you're looking for a free option. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just sometimes you just need to move on and try and get it going. And then I recommend setting up a dedicated email account and a calendar for them in Outlook. This is something we do. I also head up our communication team. And so any emails that are coming from our veterans group come from that dedicated account and just kind of helps professionalize and elevate the messages that you're sending out. From there, once you kind of got your ducks in a row and you're ready to put yourself out to the world and get some people involved in your supporter network, it's the way we've always done it. We've hosted a cool launch party and kind of an inaugural meeting. And this is really the chance to share your ERGY on the broad scale. So, pick a cool venue. It's also a great place to kind of see who might be interested in joining your leadership board. As you're planning it, ask for that input, make it fun. Advertise early and often so that people know about it and have a lot of time to plan for it and prep and can attend. A lot of times we open these events up to guests so that people don't have to come to some awkward kind of networking thing alone. They can bring a friend and it makes it a pretty fun time. And then take pictures. Every photo that you've seen in here is from our employee resource group events or just our actual employees. We have really awesome people and we take every opportunity we can to share and showcase our people. After you do that big event, the follow-up communication, this is where my bread and butter communication piece comes in. You have to do that kind of that reach out, that follow-up. And all this is pre-intuitive, but just staying on top of it, saying, hey, thanks for coming. It's time to put the wheels in motion. We are ready to do elections. That's historically how we've done it. We've opened it up to anybody across any work location, whether they were based in Minneapolis, whether they were based here or in any other state we operate in. We open it up to anyone. But some of the requirements that we have implemented for eligibility, you need to be with the company at least 3 months. It used to be 6, and we had someone who was just really interested, and we didn't want that to stand in the way, but also acknowledging they have a job to learn as well. So 3 months is our bare minimum. They need to be in good HR standing, no performance improvement plans in action. And then we always have some kind of essay where people submit you know, in more detail why they want to be in the board and what they would hope to do if they were in that position. We use HR to help vote when the board is like, you know, when there isn't one, to kind of do those internal elections. But once you've got an established group, then you can go ahead and use that group to kind of vet out who's going to join you. And so that's those are kind of my primary tips. And then I just wanted to show, just make sure I'm doing okay on time here. I wanted to kind of show some examples of things, because again, another question I get a lot is like, we do not have a budget to commit to this in this way. And our budget is pretty hefty. It's over $150,000 between each of our 4 employee resource groups, and those stipends, it is significant. And again, I feel really lucky that I work at a company where they've seen the value in that. But there are a lot of things you can do that don't cost anywhere near that or anything at all. So these are just some examples of some low or no cost things that you could do. So hosting a departmental lunch and learn, again, there are so many subject matter experts in any organization that you can do for free, you know, like marketing 101, or, you know, better understand your benefits, or, you know, the art of selling the car. Like there's a lot of people who would be very willing to raise their hand and share their institutional knowledge, and, you know, using your brand of ERG to kind of, you know, sponsored by this. Like in the end of December, our Pride group did a dealership tour for our corporate employees. We had a lot of employees who had never actually even been in our own stores. And so we just, or maybe hadn't purchased from us yet. And so we just hosted this tour and just sponsored it by the Pride group. And it was a great turnout. And there are a lot of simple ways to kind of co-brand things like that. Starting a book club, running that skill workshop. Again, our finance director, she recently led a skill workshop on understanding your credit. Like I learned so much in that workshop, and she knows this stuff inherently. And that was branded as a Women of Walser event. In-office mixers, a mentorship program, using inclusive language in your job postings. These are all very free things you can do, and that are pretty easy little adjustments to make. Heritage Month awareness. Obviously, we are coming out of one and moving into another. That video is, that little photo there is a shot of me and Nayeli doing a little video spotlight for Hispanic Heritage Month. Starting a quarterly news member, a Slack or a Teams channel, and then engaging with all those wonderful like-minded industry partners out there who are really valuable supporters as well. Those are all low or no cost ways to be connected and do some fun things. Some medium cost ideas. So, you know, maybe you elevate it a little bit more. Food always is really expensive. If you've ever had to order food for people, it can be kind of pricey, but hosting a cultural lunch, you know, doing a new member kit or a swag kind of kit when someone joins the company, especially like, I think every female, I'm pretty sure, who joins our company gets a little welcome kit from Women of Walser. We do, you know, you could do member birthday cards or work anniversary cards. You could get even bigger. Maybe you're doing some community outreach like Habitat for Humanity. They do a women build, they do a rainbow build. You could hire an outside speaker to come in and kind of share on some topics. Offsite mixers, that there's a lot of different options here. These are a couple of things that we've done recently. The top photo there is of hit Hmong New Year lunch. That's what it was. Yeah, Hmong New Year. So we had traditional food coming in, and then down below was our women in leadership breakfast that we did. And then higher costs, this is where you're getting into more things that are really impacting maybe on the benefits side that are pretty significant, but this could be, you know, anything that reflects your workforce kind of demographics. Like I mentioned, the paternity, maternity, adoption, paid leave, the fertility and adoption assistance. These are definitely more significant, but really when you're kind of getting to this point, you're really having an ability to impact your work group. You could sponsor an e-learning course, you know, for someone who wants to, like that CADIA Accelerator program, or maybe you're sponsoring someone's attendance at a conference like Women in Automotive, or sending someone to kind of advance their own education. And then obviously dedicating full budgets to ERG boards and stipends. Those are some higher cost examples. This little cutie on the screen here, by the way, so anytime someone has a baby in our company, we always send them a little Walser blanket, and it says, you can't see it, but it says like high energy, full cuteness. It's pretty fun. So those are some cute ways to partner onto some of the fun things you do in your organization. The bottom line, there are so many benefits to engaging with your employees in any way, even especially in this way, but in any way that's related to this. You will see employee engagement go up. It's very likely that you'll see improvements in retention, innovation, creativity, performance, and hopefully profitability. And, and again, I mentioned that this is a little bit of art and science. We're not perfect. We're still working on these things, but that's why I really lean on our engagement survey, because that is really telling to me about some of the benefits we're already seeing. And also, this is a great mitigator of turnover and risk. From a liability perspective, you are really doing the right thing also, by the way, for your people, and making sure that you're engaging in the modern workforce we have today in the right way. This is not secret sauce. People always use this phrase, but it's not at all. I mean, you control the work environment, but not the way people show up or what they're carrying. We don't always know that. But ERGs can open minds. They can support people as people, which I mean, that is so critical, while prioritizing the work and the results which we all want and need. Empowering our employees to work in a place where they can feel seen, heard, respected, and supported is an incredibly compelling employee value proposition. I have just a few more slides here. I wanted to give you just a few pieces of information from our kind of former leadership who headed up our ERGs. Andrew Kruger, former president of Women of Walser. Her advice, pick a few small goals that are tied to business KPIs and go after them. It's easy to produce a lot of fun, cool things, but she really found that staying true to the mission was the most important aspect with these kind of focused target areas. It can feel daunting, but start small and be consistent and you'll gain traction. Wes Taylor Ortiz, he's the general manager at our Acura location and the founding president of Drive with Pride. He said starting this was the highlight of his career. The biggest piece of advice to anyone he'd give is to have patience and stay the course. There's going to be a lot you want to do right out of the gate, but you need to build that solid foundation and find your flow. And Song Bang, current president of the Asian Hmong Alliance, said that starting and running an ERG is not easy. He actually wrote in here, sometimes it makes me want to quit. I'm like, oh my God, Song. But he was real about it. He said, my takeaway is to spread out the work and to find common goals to work toward. He's an amazing delegator and is really skilled at that. And said, once a project's done, it's a great accomplishment to be shared. So just some input and advice from our past and present ERG leadership. So my one final thought here on avoiding ERG burnout: do what's motivating, make it fun and make it relevant to your work group. It's really hard to, I think, connect with people. We are all extremely busy people who have our own personal lives, families outside of work. So what you're doing really needs to hit home and connect, and then recognize your contributors. Hassan Gandour down on the bottom left in the black shirt, he was our inaugural winner of our Inclusive Leader of the Year award. He's the general manager of our Wayzata Nissan location. And so when you find someone, and he came to like every single Women of Walser event. He even came to Aerial Fitness, which I was really surprised by. So when you have someone who is walking the walk for you and advocating, make sure you find these ways to recognize the people who are standing up. So with that, I will close and hand it over to Sandy. And if there's any questions, please feel free, and I'll do my best to answer.
Hi, I had a question.
Yeah.
Well, first, my leader is Gloria Purdy, and she just has said she just thinks you're the bee's knees, and this was excellent, and I agree. So I'm very glad I got to.
I saw your shirt, and I was like, oh yes, Hoffman in the house.
Oh, Gloria.
So Gloria and I have been in lots of talks about rolling out DEI initiatives here at Hoffman Auto Group, and we are in a transition from our third generation of ownership to our fourth.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is a really great timing to roll this out because we have them as huge sponsors.
Yeah.
Where I have some concern that I'm curious how you might give advice to navigate is as the Hoffmans are transitioning into their new ownership roles. We obviously want them to reach a certain point before we say, okay, now they're sponsoring this initiative. How might you manage some people in the company who are very much saying like, we want this now, or this is something that's super important to me? The example would be, I've interviewed a few people for different roles and said, what's a deal breaker? And they said, oh, culture. I want to see diversity. I want to see that that's an initiative. And I find it sometimes difficult to say it's coming without anything solid.
Yeah.
any best advice on maybe how to navigate some of those situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and it's hard to say when new leadership is to be like, okay, we're ready. Like, I don't know when that
Right.
ever
Because it's
really
always
happens. It's
developing.
always developing, it's always evolving. But you know, if you have access or your team has access to get into some of those kind of executive, you know, kind of planning meetings where you're thinking about what the remainder of your year looks like, or some of the big bets that you're working on, that would be the time when you could kind of start to say, like, I want us to start thinking about this and kind of seed planting a little bit with the people who are adjusting, and finding, and it's a little bit of a generic kind of comment, but finding the people who you feel like have that interest with you, and starting to seed plant with them, and starting to kind of get it on their minds that this is something that we want to see coming. And from the candidate perspective, I think I would elevate the pieces of your culture that are already working really well, and that already demonstrate these really great inclusive moments, and things that you're already doing, and then share the vision. And I don't think anyone from a candidate perspective is um, I mean, demanding like it has to be this or I'm out. Like, there's a lot of different things that make people choose or not choose a job, but being transparent about the fact that it's not here yet, but we have really great players in place who are committed to helping us make this happen. You know, they could be a part of that. And I think that's kind of how I would pitch it, because you can't promise something that's not happening. But I think as long as there's committed people who are focused on it now and keep elevating the message over and over, good things are going to come from that. So it's kind of a I'm not sure answer, but
Yeah, that's
that, I
very
mean,
helpful, though. I think what you said, especially highlighting what parts of the culture we've already cemented, is
for sure, because I bet
definitely a
you're
good
doing a
way
lot.
to,
Yeah,
right, to say we're doing stuff. This is going to be part of the stuff. You know that we accomplish things. Here's what we've accomplished.
yeah,
This just isn't there yet.
yeah, yeah. And
Kind of build that.
I think a lot of times people don't give themselves enough credit for some of the things they're already doing that are actually deeply inclusive or very open-minded. You know, going all the way from, you know, what are your core values state and how do you live them out, to ways you get involved in the community with inclusive nonprofits, like any of those things, they all paint or contribute to the picture of culture. And that's a very nebulous term for a lot of people. It can mean one thing to one person and something to someone else. But I bet there's more, you know, to talk about than maybe a lot of people are considering.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? It's time for the time is now. Dayna, I loved, I have a I loved, even though I've seen this, right? And I guess my question is, will we be able to have the slides?
Yeah, for
Okay,
sure. Yeah.
awesome. For me, Aaron's like, yay. Those ideas for, especially in the budgeting.
Yeah.
Some of the low budget ideas, because I mean, let's face it, especially if we're in retail, that's where it's going to be.
Yes. Yeah.
And but there's such great ideas,
Yeah.
easy, fun, things that can be sponsored by the ERG. You
For
know,
sure. Yeah.
I think it's the getting started part, and gaining executive buy-in.
Yeah.
Right. When if you're someone who is not in a position of power,
Hmm.
how do you gather the data
Yeah.
to show the executives that, like, look, I mean, one thing that comes to my mind, maybe look and see what competitors are doing.
For sure. Definitely. That's a
For
great point.
EVP, but I don't know any other things, because I always think about HR, right?
For sure. So I think uh thank you, Erin. I think one great way is, you know, to not go up the chain, so to say, but like, I think, I'm not sure if Taylor is still on this call, but looks like she hopped off. But Taylor is from Walser, and she's works on our HRIS in, you know, at Walser, and all that data. And so using the resources you have, who might not be at an executive level, but might be you know, in your broader department, to say, hey, listen, I'm looking for this data, and sharing why you're looking for it, you know, with your team, so they know, like, I'd like to do a little preliminary research. I'm trying to pull some information, you know, is that okay? And can I go ahead and run with this a little bit? There's nothing wrong with looking at that data if people are understanding why and what you hope to do with it. I think another great resource is to look at the census information that you have available for your state. Like, what is the makeup of your customers that are coming through your door? How are you speaking to them? We have an extremely high Somali and Hmong population in Minneapolis and St. Paul, the highest per capita Hmong population in the United States, actually. So it's no surprise that we have many Hmong employees working in our work group and shopping with us. And so for us to know that, it's a huge empowering fact to an ERG is a no-brainer. It makes complete sense. So look at the data that you have that's out there that's public. Utilize the people who maybe are in your department, and then again, kind of start to build your case, you know, with as you make those asks higher and higher.
You know, and one other thing that about ERGs, right? I think that, have you looked at how they impact sales in those particular ethnicities?
Yeah.
Right? Or those communities? Because one, listening to sometimes, you know, Tiana Mick talking about how she reaches her individual community, right? It's, are any of your ERGs focused on reaching?
Yes. 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 I love that question. So again, I'll reference AHA, the Asia Hmong Alliance. So our Toyota location recently became, you know, #1 in market share, overtaking kind of the long-standing dealer group or dealership that has a huge Hmong staff, and very prominently advertises, you know, we speak Hmong, and it just very, very focused on that. And I don't think it's solely because of the Asia Hmong Alliance, but I do know that it's definitely part of how we view connecting with customers, very involved in the community and understanding what's important to that particular ERG. So if community involvement is primarily how you're connecting with potential customers, be involved in the community, go where they are. I don't have any hard kind of facts or data to like pinpoint like X amount of sales came from that, but it's definitely, you know, you can walk across our show floors and see it. So I think as we get more surgical, you know, going forward, we're established, our foundation is there. Those are the types of things we look at about how we can be even more, you know, concrete in the things that we've achieved.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dayna. Does anybody else have any questions before we close? Awesome.
Cool. Thank you for having me, Sandy. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording and thank you anybody who's watching on the replay.